Good day. I'm Teresa Fredericks from Growing Businesses Using Projects, bringing you yet another video in the procurement series. We are looking at the implementation of the Procurement Act of Trinidad and Tobago, unsettled issues. Video 8, we're looking at local government development, which is one of the objects of the Act, and we are looking at concerns with respect to small businesses. The agenda: what is local content, definitions of local industry development, Procurement Act, and the Energy Chamber. We're going to be looking at two definitions. The intent of the reform of public procurement with respect to local industry development, requirement in the Procurement Act to limit participation to facilitate local industry development, that is section 28, requirement for public bodies to achieve local government objective, benefits of achieving local industry development, and issues to be resolved, concerns with small business ability to access procurement opportunities. We have to start with what is local content. The term local content is defined in section 4 of the Act as the local value of goods, works, or services measured as the amount of money or percentage of each dollar of expenditure remaining in Trinidad and Tobago after the production of the good or the performance of the work or service. To go further, local content is also described as the degree of local ownership, control, and financing by citizens of Trinidad and Tobago in conformity with internationally accepted norms and the key tenets of the international conventions, such as the General Agreement on Trade and Services. Because the reform was seeking to ensure that local industry development takes place, local industry development is one of the objects of the Procurement Act. It includes those activities that serve to enhance local capacity and competitiveness by involvement and participation of local persons, firms, and capital market, and knowledge transfer during the conduct of the program of goods, works, or services that are being procured. And let me just put a plug for knowledge transfers. Sometimes we bring down consultants and we don't take the opportunity to write into their contracts that part of their requirement is that they train the locals, so that you don't have to always call for them, but there are people whose capacity with respect to these types of procurement have been built locally. This definition comes from the Procurement Act of 2015. However, there is another definition, and this is according to the Energy Chamber. Local industry is defined and graded as follows: Trinidad and Tobago registered, meet client quality, health, safety, and environmental technical requirements, commercially competitive, shareholding by nationals of Trinidad and Tobago, asset ownership by nationals of Trinidad and Tobago, financed by nationals of Trinidad and Tobago, profit retained by nationals of Trinidad and Tobago, supports local companies or businesses, local workforce, full exportability. So this is how the Chamber saw it. So let's discuss local industry development and local content a little more. The White Paper Reform of the Public Sector Procurement Regime 2005 identifies Trinidad and Tobago reform approach to local industry development and local content by recognizing that reform initiatives should. So this is what we wanted as a country in fostering social and economic development, address the guaranteeing of substantial market share to local businesses and the development of local skills. So then you remember I spoke about knowledge transfer. Clearly specify that procurement systems should promote local industry while being sensitive to international commitments. We have certain international commitments that we have to adhere to. Guaranteeing substantial market share to local business in order to develop and promote local industry. include balance between a commitment to develop local businesses and the need to provide a level playing field. In developing competitive local industries, including small and medium enterprises, SMEs, identify that domestic industry will be given a 10% price differential over foreign suppliers of goods and services. We tend to import people to do our big projects, and then they do our big projects based on what they know outside, and some of them do not tailor it to what we have inside of Trinidad and Tobago readily available. Identify appropriate incentives to local contractors in their competition with external firms. So this is what we wanted to do. So how was this promoted into the Act? Section 28 of the Procurement Act caters for industry development, local industry development. And it says a procuring entity may limit participation in procurement proceedings to promote local industry development and local content. And I found that strange. May is a strange word to use there. May is if we want to. May is, do we have a system in place to? Do we want all that work? So that when I heard of the reform of the local government and how it can facilitate local industry development, I was excited. Because I felt that this act and this section of the act did not really help. The second part of it, a procuring entity, when first soliciting the participation of suppliers or contractors, shall declare whether the participation of suppliers or contractors is limited pursuant to this section and the nature of and the reason for the limitations. So you have to justify it. And if you don't want to justify it, there's nothing to make you justify it because the act says you may. 3, a declaration made under section 2 shall not be altered. So you can't go back on your word. And 4, a procuring entity that decides to limit the participation of suppliers or contractors pursuant to this section shall include in the record of the procurement proceedings a statement of the reasons and circumstances on which it relied. So you have extra work to do. So I questioned before I read about local government reform whether this would really bring about local industry development. So I sought some guidance from the General Guidelines Local Industry Development of the OPR. It states that public bodies are required to achieve the objective of local industry development as well as the incorporation of local content in their procurement activities in accordance with the best practices described in this guideline as follows. And one of the things they did is showed that yes, you're achieving local industry development, but you should take into consideration achieving value for money, and you should ensure transparency, fairness, integrity, and accountability. And this is adapted from SIP's handbook. It further shows local content, the direct benefit, immediate benefits of local content to the goods, services, or works delivered under a given contract, and indirect benefit, longer-term benefits such as economic stimulation, local industry development, and infrastructure development. It saw this as some of the benefits of incorporating local content in procurement contracts. So let's look at some of the benefits. Public bodies are able to better value for money through competition, increased leverage of spend, and better cost control. Reduce costs, including logistics and maintenance, because it's coming from here. Customized dedicated supply. Enhance public perception and reputation. Match best practice in the private sector. Transparent reporting of benefits, more robust supply chain, because you're getting it from here. For local suppliers, opportunities for growth, increased stability and diversity of markets, improved productivity and technology, improved capability and capacity, improved national and international reputation. For local agents of international suppliers, opportunities for customized industry growth, social license to operate. And in terms of the wider economic benefits, you look at increased employment and skills, increased competition and productivity, micro and small enterprise development, localized wealth creation, provide greater certainty for investment, supply chain development, innovation, reduction in red tape bureaucracy. This is summary of benefits. It was taken from a Queensland document. What are my concerns? I've tried to sum up some of my concerns. One, the fact that the Act gave an option to public bodies to limit participation of local businesses in procurement, namely Section 28 states, a procuring entity may limit participation in procurement proceedings to promote local industry development and local content. That's one. Two, my concern with the definition of small business and the fact that business performance information collected by organizations in this country are not separated into small, medium, and large businesses. What am I saying? When I went into the business development company many moons ago, I thought that I would be able to track information on how the small business sector was performing. I soon realized that this was not to be, because organizations that gathered statistics on the performance of business did not have an agreed definition of small business and did not separate information gathered into small, medium, and large. In fact, the days of Carney, when you looked at the statistics for agriculture, more than 80% of the figure there could have been attributed to Carney. I have some further concerns. My concern that our big conglomerates, whose many business span small, medium, and large sectors, and the fact that contracts may seem to be awarded to different companies, but they are part of one conglomerate with one set of overall directors. The fact that the big conglomerates also bid for small contracts, which should be the purview of small contractors. In an article I did in 2015, I spoke of the need for set-asides. Set-aside proposals allow for the inclusion of a small percentage set-aside for small business, which is to be gradually increased over a period of years. It allows for a definition of small business sector that could be used not only with respect to procurement, but also in the gathering of business statistics by organizations such as the Central Statistical Office, so that one is able at last to capture data on the performance of the sector. It would allow for the appointment of a body to administer the set-aside program, that is, an agency input to supervise the contractor-subcontractor relationship. So the rationale for the recommendation of set-asides was the recognition that the normal tenders, procedures, or requirements were so demanding that normally small businesses would not qualify. In addition, it is very difficult for small businesses where there are many issues to compete with big businesses. The fact is recognized worldwide. The recommendation sought to ensure that for contracts which MSMEs could perform, cognizance was taken of the circumstances of small business entrepreneurs, and transparent opportunity would be provided for them to benefit from these opportunities. I looked and I saw that the USA had set-aside programs. Barbados also has a Small Business Act. As I said, this is an extract from a blog I did in 2015 on the 2014 bill. In addition, we have clause 29, which requires that due diligence be done on suppliers and contractors. Among other things, they have to have the necessary professional and technical qualifications and competence, financial resources, equipment and other physical facilities, managerial capability, reliability, experience and personnel to perform the procurement contract and meet relevant industry standards. The above will not come naturally for many of our small businesses. The Fair Share program was constituted to help small persons obtain contracts. A concern is, was it constituted and financed to offer the full range of services necessary to bring our small business persons up to the required level in the bill for them to obtain government contracts. I close here, and we're going to be looking at local government and a role in procurement. If you like my content, give it a thumbs up and please subscribe.